Hey Colin, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. How's the baby?
Good. She's sleeping right now. I
Oh,
timed
good.
it perfectly.
Perfect
Yeah.
timing.
Yep.
You have to plan your meetings around nap time.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on what my wife has going on, but she's
How old is she now?
she's 18 months.
Oh, wow.
She's
Okay. So she's walking and everything.
yeah. She's trying to talk. She's learning little baby sign language. She's a little more I don't know, aggressive than my other kids. They're just like ready to go.
Oh, it's a girl thing, let me tell
Yeah.
you. Yeah, it's very much that. Even now, my daughter is 3, and I see little boys in her class, and they're so well behaved and mild mannered,
Yeah.
timid. And all the girls, oh my gosh, they're always like running amok and telling the boys what to do. And yeah, I think it's just like a girl thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes
What's
sense.
her name? Why am I forgetting her name?
Oh, you're fine. It's Marlo.
Marlo. Yeah. So cute. She's adorable.
Yeah. How are you liking your new place?
I like it, but it's like, we kind of packed up and moved, and, I'm so excited to be close to work, and now, we're working from home. So,
Yeah.
oh well. I mean, we like our condo though. It's brand new. It's really nice.
Cool.
But we do have to start, house hunting again, which I'm not looking forward to.
Yeah. We just put it on a place near Superior, I think, just to kind of get started. But hopefully we'll get out there in
Like
September.
buying or renting?
Just renting
Renting
for
for now.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, the market's finally leveled off a bit out there, and I'd be interested to see, it's terrible in a year what it's like. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like just because we just went through the process of selling our house, I kind of feel like it's still a seller's market,
yeah,
maybe not as bad as it was, 5 years ago or 4 years ago, but it's still very much like we got multiple bids and we were able to like negotiate and like things like that. But of
yeah,
course, I mean, I think it depends on the price point too.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Cool. Yeah. Well, good luck.
Yeah, thanks. You
Hey,
too. Yeah.
hey, it's like Scott. Hey, Chris. Hey
Chris
there.
Wood and Scott Fox. Hello, hello.
Hey,
Hey.
good afternoon.
Yeah, good
How's
to see you.
everybody? It's so nice to see everybody.
It's wonderful to see you. Two things. You've just, can y'all hear me? Because you were just sketchy.
Hmm. We can hear
Hear
you.
you fine. I hear you fine. Audio's good.
Okay,
Yeah, yours seems
great.
better.
Chris Wood, also, your face is in the dark. So, yeah, let's see if we can turn, your light is right above you. So,
Yeah, you have a bright light behind you. Yeah.
I'm trying to see if I
Aura's
can
great.
move the computer.
yeah. I'm thinking since we're talking HR, it's going to be good to see your battle-torn face.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Sally, sometimes I do that on purpose.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
exactly. I
Well,
don't want
that's
to
a
know.
Don't call me out on it if you ever see me doing that. It's intentional.
No. So, oh man, hey Stephen, great to see you. You're on mute. Stephen, you're on mute. And back on your face.
There we go.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay,
Do you want
great.
to share your screen, Sally?
Yeah. Yeah, let me work on that. Hang on, let me share the one I want. Let's see here. Hang on just a second. I'm going to go ahead and. Oh, do I record to the cloud or record to computer, Colin?
I usually just do cloud. It's easier to share it with Sam.
Okay, awesome.
If you record it to your computer, it's hard to share because the file size is so gigantic.
Yep.
Email.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Okay. And then we're going to go to here.
This is the first time you guys have seen me with my hair combed in like a month.
Like a what? Let me see. Oh,
Like a
my,
what?
with my hair combed in a month.
it looks nice.
We
Thank you.
appreciate you getting all snazzy for us, Steven.
Yeah. So if anybody, let's see, Colin, are people able to just flow in as they need to? Because now that I'm sharing my screen, it's less easy for me to look around.
Yeah, no, you all didn't get put in a waiting room, right? It should be good.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. So, Chris, I don't know who you know on this call yet. Do you know Stephen Miller?
No, I don't believe so.
Hey,
Okay.
Chris.
Hello?
So
Yeah.
Stephen is going to be one of our, we're going to actually put him on the panel today because he's such a ringer, but so Stephen runs the mentor program. So he's connected with about 250 people in the network, Chris, that may be useful to you. So that's why I bring it up. Stephen, you want to know Chris Wood because he is a really long-term friend of mine. We've been friends since grad school. He's out of Carl Wyman's lab where he did his PhD and then an NRC postdoc at NIST. And then he's been in many photonics companies around the Front Range since then in a variety of both technical and P&L roles. So he's just a true ringer in the photonics area.
Outstanding. Nice to meet you,
Very
Chris.
kind of you, Sally. Very kind.
Well, yeah, I hired you.
Yeah.
I would do it again. So, yeah, and that's actually one of the things we'll talk about on the panel about hiring friends. Great way to lose friends.
Well, you know, I had one of the classic examples of you fundraise together, you know, with friends. You get a friend funded. You're on the board. You're an equity shareholder, preferred equity shareholder. Try to get the company to an exit moment. Your friend, the CEO, screws the pooch and needs to be replaced. The board replaces him. He blames it personally on you. He subsequently uses his controlling shares to fire the CEO we hired to take the company across the finish line in the middle of an acquisition. The acquisition falls through and the company is sold for spare parts. The relationship's ruined forever. And just to put a little icing on the cake, at last year's Denver Startup Week, I saw him for the first time in a year. And he says, maybe someday you'll tell me why you betrayed me in a way I've never experienced in my entire life.
Wow. Wow.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's the friends moment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That is the
So that's why, like, this is in some ways the best panel of the year, right? I mean, this is truly the one where we all have just unbelievable stories about what it's like to deal with people as you try to build something great.
Sounds like the next one of these should be at a bar somewhere.
Yeah. Totally agree.
I was listening to a panel about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and a couple of the entrepreneurs were saying, you know, all these people that, you know, have had, you know, think that COVID is a big challenge, and they talk about, you know, how they're drinking during the COVID, you know, crisis, you know, than they used to. They're like, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, you've learned that a long time ago.
Yeah. Yes. So true. So, okay. So I'm going to make one more introduction. Do we see Susan yet? She's also on our panel. Susan Srota, you in yet? Okay.
don't see her.
Colin, you might reach out and make sure she's not having trouble getting on.
Okay.
So
Sally, one thing I've noticed, and I don't know if this is an update or something, but a lot of the systems, there's an extra step now to connect.
yeah.
I think there was a tweak in the software and you've got to click twice a lot of times to truly connect.
Okay. Great. We shall see. Well, I see people jumping on, but it's just non-trivial, I think, to get everyone there. So let's see. Okay. Everybody, we will start in just about 30 seconds because this is going to be a wild rodeo. It's going to be really fun, and I want to give our panelists as much time as possible. So, Colin, I'm going to just leave you with the reins to just, if anybody needs help getting in, anything like that, I'll leave that with you while I lead us out of the starting gates. There's Susan. Welcome, Susan. It's good to have you. Can you hear me, Susan? You're on mute.
I am here. Sorry, I went to get a drink while I was opening.
No problem. Just making sure that, yeah, that's fantastic. I just wanted to make sure we could hear your voice because we're going to get ready to be firing a bunch of questions at you. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Super fun.
This is going to be great. So, okay. Awesome. So Colin, I think I'm going to go started and we will go from there. So welcome everybody. I am Sally Hatcher. I'm our Commercialization Academy Director here at Venture Partners, CU Boulder. And I'm really happy to have you here. We're going to do a 1-hour lunch and learn. So grab your food, grab your snacks. Please put yourself on mute. And this is going to be a really fun rock and roll show. We have a truly killer panel today to help talk about how the whole question of building a team. So we will talk about why you need one, who you need, how to get them, and why this is hard. And that's where the panel really comes in. So that's me. If you haven't met me, reach out. We can help connect you to the tools that you need as well as the people. During our talk today, if you want to raise your hand, you can, and we'll try to grab it. But also, we use the chat a ton. So just open up the chat and put your comments or questions in there. We're going to hold a lot of those, if possible, and just ask the panel. So we've got ringers on the line on purpose for that. So who are we today? It's Colin and I are going to be talking with our trusty intern, Sam, and his pooch, who will be helping from the back. And then a really great panel, Susan Sirota, Chris Wood, PhD, Scott Fox, and Stephen Miller are all very experienced entrepreneurs who have had to hire, had to fire, had to find the right people to get onto the bus in order to build their teams. So that's an old saying from Jim Collins. He wrote a very famous book on built to last, and then what kind of company you need in order to, or what are the skills you need in order to make a great long-term company. And the very first chapter was getting the right people onto the bus. So we're going to talk about why that is true today and who you need to put on. Don't forget, that's our Venture Partners team. We can help you. You've got questions. We've got licensing managers who can help you through getting your startup started. So, okay, so let's talk about this in context for just a minute. We have a 12-step program here at Venture Partners. It's called the Elements of Entrepreneurship. Yes, it's a 12-step program for some reasons that you can probably figure out. Entrepreneurship is hard. You need a team, you need help, you need support getting there. So if we're doing one of these lunch and learns each month. They are recorded, and you can go back and see the ones that you want to see to just grab the information off of them. We talk a little bit, we'll give you a short overview, and then we're going to do something like the panel today to really flesh out the ideas. So just to recall where we've been, we started in January with the idea that entrepreneurship is flipped when you are a high-tech founder. So if you have a really great technology that you invented in your lab, and now you want the whole world to get to use it, you're starting from the wrong end. So the right end is that you need to understand the market, and you need to understand what kind of problems people have there in the market. if you can solve their problem, then you can sell them a product. But if you just try to prevent your really cool technology out of your lab, nobody wants to buy it and you're not going to go anywhere. So we talk through that. In the second session, we talk about customer discovery. You actually need to go talk to the market. You need to find out what those pain points are. And that's our intro to how to do it. Number 3, what the hell is an IRL? Well, that's an industry or innovation level. And the whole point there is you can kind of chart yourself and figure out what you have done right so far, where you need to put in work. So it's really helpful to have frameworks so that you can organize your thinking. Number 4, license or startup. I consider this, personally speaking, this is the fundamental of where many high-tech companies start. The real question is, if you can go on and license out a technology, that may well be more profitable and easier in the long run than a startup. But sometimes a startup is just where you have to go or where your passion is. So you're really trying to figure that out. Number 5 is ecosystem. Where does your product or idea fit in the bigger picture of the industry? You need to understand where you fit in order to show people what your value is. Last month, we had a pretty rousing discussion on cash. So the real questions there of how do you talk about it in terms of financials? How do you manage it in terms of cash flow? How do you acquire it in terms of funding? How do you not run out of it in terms of cash is king? So, and the real issue here is that when you're doing a startup, industry uses money as its metric. So you need to be able to put things in terms of revenue and then your expenses. Hey, can we get everybody to pop onto mute, please? Just because I'm hearing some car noise or something in the back. Thanks a lot. Okay, so today, how to build a team. We'll talk about the rest 1 month from now, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so today we're going to talk about why is a team important. And I want to just throw out there the idea that you are very likely the founder right now. You've got some cool idea in your head. Either you've been working on a technology or working on an app, or you've got an idea, but at some point you just truly need help. So at the very beginning as a founder, you are kind of irreplaceable, right? It's your idea, it's all of your work, it's also your passion that is going to fuel this thing to any kind of success. However, you really need help to do it. So we're going to talk about what kind of help you need. I want to point out that the people that are on the panel today are all experienced entrepreneurs. They are not recruiters. There's a real reason for this. As much as I really value the work of recruiters, you can't afford them. They're super expensive. And they are building a team that has to get paid a lot of money. So this is also a question of how do you build a team when you're really cash strapped? And how do you actually get somebody to join you and want to be a part of your team when you can't necessarily pay them and you really can't pay a market rate? So, okay, we're going to run through just a few slides with the big picture and then jump to the panel. So, Colin, over to you. Colin, are you on
There
mute?
we go. Sorry about that. Hey everyone, I'm Colin with Venture Partners, work with Satellite Commercialization Academy. So here's a quick look at our agenda and kind of move through things quickly to get to our panel. All right, so we're not going to get into this, but this is a business model canvas for a medical device. And the important thing here is, this is a way to look at, visualize what are all the parts of your business, how do they interconnect. But for this course, looking at, you don't want to do all these things, right? And then the other part is, what are you actually good at in building other structure and support around that to be able to implement your business model. Another important concept, everyone, all the mentors we've all seen really awesome ideas that don't go anywhere. And it's really about execution. This is why Techstars and a lot of funders and accelerators look at team as one of the top things or the top thing. And it's really what gets you to your value. Looking at kind of a more data approach, looking at why startups fail, some of the top 20 reasons, 3 of them really lean into teams. So not the right team directly, disharmony on the team. Stephen Miller was talking about that just a minute ago. Then lack of passion, which is the people, is the team. So really big key part of, you know, how you can miss the mark for your company. A couple things to highlight. Sally kind of mentioned, but the team really helps you sell your idea, both to the market, to investors, so that they, you know, they have confidence that you can execute. And you want to really focus on the types of things you need done, not to get a certain position. There's a great quote from Jenny Fielding of Techstars. You know, you probably don't need a CFO. You need someone who can run numbers. It could be a business development person. So when you let go of those labels, you can find interesting, talented people that can help you do those specific things, especially early on when you don't want to have huge ongoing costs. Some of the key areas, you know, we see people looking at helping them organize the business, early sales, getting an expert in your ecosystem or in the market is really key. And then things like finance. It could be someone to help you build a model or working with a firm like a CPA firm. One of the key things that you look at early on, especially, is, you know, getting these really awesome people that you probably could not get for your team. You know, you don't have the money, maybe you're not far enough along where it would be worth it for them to go in full time. But you get these people to cobble together, help you reach a critical milestone. It can be part of what they're overall doing. We have some great mentors from our own group on here. And your team's going to change over time. This is from the Avengers, and there's lots of different people that are in that over time. But you know, you might have a team that gets you to a certain milestone, and then it changes as you keep progressing. A couple ways to look at finding them. You know, really one of the best ways is personal referrals from mentors from your network. Stephen Miller, who's on this panel, helps run our mentor network, and we have over 200 people that kind of help navigate that and can refer things. Looking at actual networks where these people are, Million Cups, CU alumni, connecting with us, looking for specific people online, and then, you know, tapping in your ecosystem. Most important part with that is to really clearly define what job has to be done. So you know what you're looking for, and they know if they can do it. Just some ideas on why people would choose to join a startup. You know, there's people that are in certain points of their life where they can afford to work for equity or for a different relationship than, you know, a salary or full-time work. It's important to understand those things and as you approach people. Not going to go through this in too much detail, but these are some of the extra costs around hiring an employee. You know, just the legal and sort of mandatory benefits to really get someone. And then Sal and I were talking, if you think about onboarding, hardware, equipment, your time, all those things, it's usually, you know, close to 2 times what the salary is the actual cost to your organization. And it's really important to understand that as you're looking to bring someone on. You know, how important are they? Are they the right person? And that gets into, you know, the cost if you hire the wrong person and how much time and money you spent on that person that didn't fit. Want to jump in any quick questions you have, throw them in the chat, and we're going to have Sally jump into moderating the panel.
Awesome. So, okay, so folks, real quick, I'm probably, Susan, I'm going to ask you to do a 30-second intro about just your experience on entrepreneurial teams.
Awesome. So I will tell you, I grew up in corporate America and huge companies, and it is extremely different, and everything about entrepreneurship is counterintuitive, and hiring is actually very much building a team counterintuitive when you look at how to do it in a startup. My most recent startup experiences is I built a company as the #2 in Austin, Texas called Kasasa, from 15 employees to 300 in 4 years. And then right now I am the founder and CEO of Waggit, which is, think an Apple Watch for dogs. And we have found product market fit. And so we are now at the point where we are building out our team.
Awesome. Hey, Chris Wood. So Chris is on this panel because he looks like a lot of you here today. Chris has his PhD out of Gila and did a postdoc at NIST, and then has spent his career, instead of choosing academia, which he absolutely could have done, he chose to go into industry where he's had a bunch of technical roles and then P&L roles. So I want you to know this because that he was brought on for a real specific reason. Chris, can you give us just 30 seconds about, you know, your HR experience and entrepreneurship?
Sure. It's you know, that the discussion leading up to this reminds me of one quote that it was from Winston Wu, who was one of our funders at New Enterprise Associates at a startup in Boulder called Network Photonics in the telecom bubble. And regarding teams, he said, you want to hire good people who can bounce back and who know how to fight and who want to win. And that's because he said, you're going to screw up your first product. So the people you want to hire, you want to know if they're going to be around for the second product and if they can clean up the mess. And that was a key insight from him, I thought, on building a startup team. And there's one other point that kind of rings true in this conversation about people, and that is, having worked at both small and big companies, there really are, I think, big company people and small company people. And, you know, the people who thrive at a place like Lockheed Martin or Ball Aerospace are usually brilliant people. They're not always the ones who will thrive in a startup.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, Scott Fox. Scott is one of our entrepreneurs in residence. As he says, I've hired and fired more people than I can count. that was a little brutal, but very true. Scott, can you give us just a few thoughts on entrepreneurial teams?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, you know, I was thinking about today's panel and thinking about how much time all of you spend on your product development, and would encourage all of you to spend close to that amount of time on the people development, right? So we tend to forget how important it is because people are the most important thing. I've spent 40 years in the wireless industry in big companies, small companies. I've been chairman of a global trade association. I have hired and fired so many different people over the years. I've also been on 42 or 43 boards of directors. And when you're a board of director, you know, you spend a lot of time on helping the company hire, identify, and develop the people below that, right? So at an international level, at trade associations, hiring and firing lots of folks, and again, I echo. I'm so glad this is a key topic out of the 12, because people are everything, right? VCs will tell you that too, right? You know, good ideas are a dime a dozen. I think Colin said that.
Very true. So, okay, Stephen Miller. So Stephen, you guys know him as the mentor guy, but Stephen is an investor and he has invested and built teams. So Stephen, what 30-second overview on very small teams and getting funded from them? You're on mute. You're on mute. Stephen, you're on mute. There you go.
Got it. Yeah, a lot of you know me from the Mentor Network. My first startup was in 2003, and I've been involved with over 54 over the course of the last, what does that make it, about 17 years, and in a variety of different roles. When it comes to fundraising, you know, everyone thinks that raising the money is the hardest thing, when in reality, creating the team that can raise the money is potentially the bigger challenge. And, you know, one of the things that we often lose sight of is, you know, getting an investment or a check or a VC in the door isn't what solves all the problems. The right leadership team is what makes problems go away and allows you to execute on that vision that you have. You know, with that right team, especially when you make the early hires, those first hires, if the key ones are the right hires, that's your foundation and the stepping stone to success. And for every one of you that has, discovered something new or come up with an incredible innovation, it can only see the light of day if you execute from day one.
Okay, so here is our crack panel, and I've got 11 questions that we're kind of shade through with getting some perspective. Great questions in the chat, so we'll try to loop those in as well. So let's start with this whole idea of, I've got this great idea and I want to hire like a CEO to make this happen. And these days we don't call it a CEO. The newest idea is CXO, so that they kind of do everything, or a biz dev person. If I'm a high-tech founder, who really is that person? And do I hire them? Do they have that title? What is that very first person that I'm looking for? And Scott, because you've very recently been that person, I'm just going to start with you and then get other folks to throw in comments.
Sally, just to clarify your question, I said, if you know, because at the end you threw something else in. So what are you looking for in a CEO, or what is that very first person you're looking to hire?
I'm looking for that. So both are good questions, right? But I'm curious about this very first hire. If you start with a technical team, who's the first person you might think about hiring to join your team?
Yes. Well, my experience with especially companies coming out of the university is they tend to be thinking about the person's going to help them in the next phase of their product, as opposed to helping them understand what market they're going to go into, how they're going to build a team, right? How they're going to get to market. And so, you know, in my experience, it's typically for highly technical companies, it's generally, in my experience, kind of business development people or a financial person that can help with kind of developing the business, the ideas around that. It's not obvious to me that you need a CEO super early until you've really figured out the direction you're going and what you want to be when you grow up. And usually early on, you have vague ideas about that.
Awesome point. Does anybody want to pile on about, do you need a CEO, or who is it you actually need?
Sally, I'll jump in. It really is dependent on your business model. So there are times when you're looking, if you're doing something that is consumer facing, having someone to represent the business early on can avoid some very costly mistakes in the development process. If you're doing something that is more a technology unto itself, that you don't know exactly how you are going to commercialize, I think that you do need to wait a little longer before you bring on that business development, because you're going to pivot a few different times on the technology and you don't need that hire. So I really believe your first 20 hires in a startup have to be generalists who are extremely mission driven and can jump and be flexible at what's happening. You hire more for passion, attitude, and making sure you have that right balance at the right time of business and technical.
Awesome. Wow, there's so much to unpack, right? So you're hiring for passion, you're hiring a generalist, and you're hiring the job to be done. And the job to be done that I heard is pivoting your product till you get the right product market fit. Anybody on the panel got ideas on how do you find somebody who can help you pivot? Basically, that's customer discovery, right? How do you find that person?
I think one of the challenges is finding someone who can challenge your ideas too, because the worst thing you could do is hire a copy of yourself as your second hire. And, you know, I want to highlight Scott's notion about marketing, especially in technical fields or founders coming out of academia. They don't always appreciate how difficult marketing is, especially new product marketing, where you're filling a niche that may not even be well defined yet. And getting that right and determining what is the thing you need to build, what is the product, is incredibly hard.
You know, and I would add, because it occurs to me that in this COVID environment, I mean, we used to put tremendous importance on on having a team together, especially a small team, in the same room, right? Typically, in a very small room, right? Today that concept is challenged for medical reasons, right? And so the opportunities allow you to kind of expand the geographies of people you might pull from, or at least gives you the option to think about that, right? Rethinking the business today might be different than it was just even a few months ago, right? But to me, it's finding these people, in my experience, have been, ask all your mentors, right? All of us are on social networks. Just let people know what you're looking for. Ask around. I think someone said it earlier, right? It's hard to determine how good someone is from what they've written on a piece of paper, but finding someone who's worked with them firsthand is gold, right? It is precious, and getting a handful of those people so you can actually triangulate on the strengths and weaknesses. So, because you're not looking for strengths, you're looking to complement your weaknesses or that of the team per se, right? And so these are all things that go into it, but leverage your network, get the word out, think about what you're looking for and write it down so that it really reflects what you're looking for.
I'll add, you are always recruiting. 100% of your time, you are always on. Your messaging that you put out formally is talking not just to your potential customers or partners, it's always talking to potential employees. And that the best way to source is to have those relationships going at all times when you're not hiring, because you're always recruiting.
Excellent points. So I'm going to hit this one more time because I think it's just one of the hardest ones for us. Is this first hire, the job to be done, is that really around product market fit or messaging the company for fundraising? Stephen, how have you thought about it when you've put together teams? What's the early job to be done?
Well, I think you just touched on it, and Susan actually brought this up as well. It depends entirely on kind of what your next steps are. If you're a scientist who's an expert in the field, and you may already be known by the industry in which you need to sell or want to sell into. So, your next team member is somebody who's going to be able to develop and close all of those relationships. If you're already a known commodity, they're just selling you for that next stage, and then you're going to get to that revenue stage. If your product isn't mature yet, if the science in the lab is really strong, but you literally don't have something to sell, that next hire may need to be a product person to transition that from the bench into the real world. And if first and foremost, you can't do anything until you get capital, then that's a different hire as well. So if you have raised $5 or $10 million in various grants from SBIR or NSF or whatever may be your particular area, but you're at the end of your grant funding cycle and it's time to go out and get actual capital, then that hire is someone who's a CEO, and you transition into the chief science officer most likely, and a founding partner, of course. But you find that CEO who is experienced in your industry and history, a track record of attracting capital, turning it into multiples, and exiting at a 5 or 10x multiple. That CEO that has that track record will be a requirement for you to get funded. Maybe 1 in 1,000 deals gets funded directly to a scientist by VCs without a business CEO in place.
So I have done that. My first company, Precision Photonics, we did it cold. We brought on a venture fund from Silicon Valley just on the basis of a NIST pedigree and some business consulting that I'd done for McKinsey. But that is not a common story. So Stephen's right that at some point you'll need pedigree, but first you got to execute. It's all about the execution, like the slide that Colin showed. So let me turn this to, most people are not a full-time hire, right? So you're going to start with some contract hires. And some of those fields are things like law, finance, and regulatory. Regulatory. That's those are all you can do contract. And can the panel talk a little bit about, have they used contractors? Does this work? Do you how much do you use them for? What outsourcing has been successful to just get small pieces of people's brain?
Sure, Sally. My team is the majority contractors. We have consciously made the choice to use a lot of 1099s across multiple portions of the business. So we have a lot of engineers that are 1099. I have a key person internally who owns all of the processes and understands the product. But we need a portion of a lot of different unique specialties. I have a hardware product, so we need a portion of an electrical engineer, a portion of a mechanical engineer. Keep saying that for 20 different roles. So we've done that. I find that for software development, you can do a lot with 1099s that are nearshore, paying $40 an hour as long as they are a US-based company. There's a lot of benefits there. On the marketing side, there's also a lot you can do from a 1099 standpoint. And then as Sally mentioned, all of the legal and different things, we keep 1099. It gives us the ability to ebb and flow with what we need, not just from the skill set, but also from a runway. Because you can a much easier scale up and scale down 1099s than you can internal employees.
And just as a quick aside for everybody, what Susan is saying with the word 1099 is that's your tax document. So if you have a real hire, you have to use a W-2, and that they belong to your company. A 1099 is a contractor. So she's saying that it's easier to use people as a contractor. It's a lot harder to terminate them if they are a W-2. Somebody's asked about hiring and firing, and we will come back to that. But that's at 1099.
Sally, I would add to that. Those were great comments, right? I would add that, you know, and the topics you touched on, like law, the finance, regulatory, they are, you know, so I think I would recommend that everyone really think about their company and what they want it to be when it grows up. Is it a product company? Is it a service company? Are you going to do it all yourself, right? What are the core competencies that you want to retain inside the company, and what are the things you can outsource? And those things that you can outsource are a lot easier to kind of put out to contractors as well, right? And so you really want to begin with the end in mind, right? If your go-to-market includes partnerships, it might be that there's certain skills you don't need inside your company. And that's where, you know, the business development, thinking through not just the product market fit, but how you're going to get to market is so essential. And then back to the law and finance, right? There are a lot of companies out there that can take outsourced financing, payroll. They offer competitive services. They'll do your taxes early stage. You have to select carefully, but there's a lot available there. There's a lot of lawyers that we all know out there too, and there's some that are early stage and some that are not. Make sure you're talking to an early stage person who's ethical, focused, and really understands you don't have much money early on and values the business you're going to deliver to them later much more.
Awesome. Anybody else on the panel want to chime in?
I would echo some of that as well. It's they're all great comments. Currently, we're using, I would say, somewhere between 40 to 50% contractors, and it's a gold mine for a company that wants the flexibility with their cash and the flexibility with their people. I think it's important to have a strong network of contractors and having people on your team who have used these contractors before, who can vouch for them. It's a very important thing to have contractors you trust and can go back to. Quite a nice network. This contract, and again, typically, and coming out of academia, I think a lot of startup founders may have a tendency to say, well, I'm a teacher, I'm a mentor. And while that's a good thing, startups don't always have the luxury of time to bring people up. And the thing a contractor can do is give you top shelf senior people to come in and get a job done quickly that would otherwise take a very long time for a junior person. Yeah, you pay the money, but you trade that against time to market.
That is a really good point. I mean, here on campus, we are really trained to use graduate students because they're super brilliant and they work like dogs and they get paid just about the same amount. So we think of using cheap, smart labor, On the other hand, if you can bring in an expert who has done this and knows the right course, that might be a better way to go. So and just depends on circumstances, but let me flip this whole question around. We just had 3 people say why it's great to have a contractor. So Stephen, could you weigh in on why do you want anybody that you actually hire? Is there a reason to have a full-time hire? You're on mute.
There we go. Sure. Sometimes it's because someone co-developed, your technology or product, with you. I mean, that's, one reason. And, that's a great co-founder to have. It also creates some interesting conversations and some disagreements along the way as well. One thing that is almost irreplaceable is the passion, the tenacity that a co-founder can bring to each other. So if there's someone that complements your skill set, is the yin to your yang, or brings that same passion of what you're doing to the table, but with a complementary skill set, there's no substitute. And for those of you that are living this now, it's not an 8 to 5 job. It's a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. that I wake up in the middle of the night because I'm so excited about it, and I'm going to make that one extra call. There's no substitute, for that. There's also a lot to be said for building a team, especially in the early stages. 5, 6, 7 people as you start to grow that all share that passion, and those are people that can be with you for a long time. And ask anybody who trusts the guys up in Seattle out their crazy software idea, and some of those early people did okay, and you could fill in the blanks of a lot of other examples as well. So a core team from the beginning, especially if there's passion, shared interest, commitment, and trust, they can go into battle with you like no others.
Well, yeah, I echo that. And I would say that, again, it's the ownership and the passion that people bring, and it's all they think about, right? There's real value to that. And if I were bringing in a consultant, it would be for a temporary role, and it would be with very clear understanding, right? That they're going to do a job and go away, and that job might be helping me identify my specific needs that are unique to my business and the context of my current organization, right? And so make sure that you hire a consultant that's not just coin operated, but one who really cares and really wants to make a difference, right? And knows what the mission is when they actually come in, and be careful that they're not quietly hoping they're going to get a job so that their advice might lead you in that direction, right? These are things CEOs or founders can fall prey to, right? Just be careful, use them wisely, and don't have all contractors, right? I mean, but contract those things that are definitely not going to be a core competency of the company. Right?
Yeah, Scott, I'm with you, is get creative in how you compensate your key contractors so your incentives are aligned. Because most just an hourly or a project-based thing give the incentive for the contractor to keep generating more work.
Yeah. Susan, can you give an example of just what you're thinking there?
Certainly. So on a product development, if you're going to contract out for engineers, they are making money for every hour that they spend on your project. And so what we've done with ours, because our contractors on the engineering side are long-term partners, we've been using the same partners for over 3.5 years now. And they have, as a part of their compensation, bonuses that they get for meeting time and budget. We also have given them a little bit of equity because they are a long-term partner. I don't recommend that for most contractors, but in this scenario, they are no longer incentivized to continue to work and make bugs and find bugs because they get paid more. They're incentivized more to hitting those time and quality things and to growing our company into being $1 billion business.
I love that, because you're hiring for the job to be done. You're not hiring them for the amount of effort they're putting into it.
You got it. The other thing I'd add on the having employees versus contractor side is one of the most important things you're doing when you're building out your team is the first 15 people will define your culture. And when you are huge, your culture will define whether you make it through all of the different things. And it allows you to be so much more flexible if you have the right culture, because you don't need as many systems and processes. If things are done a certain way that you have defined consciously up front, and you cannot really build that with contractors, you build that with those first employees.
Susan is hitting on something that really inspires me, because it really is about the team that you build over time. I have also been in a startup, though, that absolutely focused on culture. And in the long run, we were taking our eye off the ball of product. It is so much easier to hire well and to hire people who are passionate, committed, and can quickly be aligned, as opposed to spending time on culture. If you have to hire somebody to be your minister of culture, to me, that's an expense that you typically don't have. You just don't have the cash or the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth for early on. So build the right team and set the culture from there. So I want to turn to always the big question of how do you pay these folks? So, my personal experience with Precision Photonics was that I was unpaid until we brought in money. So when we brought in our first round of financing, I was paid, life was good. And before that, I wasn't. So, and I did have, substantial amount of equity because it was my company. So folks, can y'all weigh in on the panel about how do you pay the first people?
So I'll go ahead and throw out a couple early thoughts, and you touched on a few things, Sally. One of the things that I've always used as a rule of thumb is, your first hires are paid by your first equity round of investment. As you build out your team, you're paid by revenue as the founder. That's frequently how I've seen that, come along. I know a lot of people that are looking for that first round of, venture capital. They say, as soon as I get paid, I can start, as soon as I get that check, I can start paying myself. You use that to develop the product and to develop the team that you hired and pay the team you hired. Revenue is how you pay the founders. The other thing I wanted to offer is, we talk about equity. There's been some questions in the Q&A as well, about equity. And too often I find that in the early stages, people just, treat, equity kind of like M&Ms. There's always going to be more. It's really easy to consume. Hey, have some M&Ms. My one recommendation would be treat equity like that it is. And equity is a great incentive for your team members, especially if their interests are aligned. But the importance of vesting can never be overestimated. That equity has to be earned. It has to be earned over time. And that faith has to be proven and reestablished, on that team. It's easy to get a hired gun CEO, say, we get funded, you pay me now. And and I want this, and this. If you're truly aligned, your team will see their equity as being their grand slam, as being their, reward, but you don't take that victory lap until you've all taken the laps together.
Stephen, like you're hitting on what I see the biggest mistakes or people make is on the how do they give out equity. Mm-hmm. And you're right, people tend to treat it like M&Ms. The biggest watch outs that I would highly recommend is no matter what, don't go cheap on your lawyer for setting up your equity, because it's got to be done right. There are huge tax ramifications on if you do options versus if you do when you're initially doing it, what that value is, and it will cost you millions if you do it wrong. And so make sure you get a lawyer. The second is be really careful of advisors. There are so many advisors out there who want, and their whole gig is to try and get portions of your equity. And they can be great if they work, but make sure you clearly spell out the expectations of them to get that equity. And to Stephen's point, make sure you vest. And you can do with employees a 1-year cliff where they have to stay at least a year to vest to get their stock. And don't ever feel bad about that, because when you bring in venture dollars, if you've already vested most of your equity, they're going to make you revest it because they want to make sure you have an incentive to stick around. So you need to think about your teams the same way that they're thinking about you.
I would comments about individualism in this, because as you look at some of your hires, your senior hires or your early hires, what is it that they want? Equity may be a big portion of that. But some people want the small company environment and are already willing to take a salary hit, and other things may be important. A story, the personal story for me is that at 2 different companies, I had negotiated my salary and employment terms and everything, and then I said, okay, now I want to give some of that money back because I want 2 more weeks off of vacation, and I don't want to have to ask anybody, or I don't want to be chastised for taking the extra time off. I said, oh, no, we can't do that. It's policy. We do this and this way. We can't do that. And it always frustrated me that startups can't see through the need to have firm policy. If a small company can't be flexible in their hiring terms and keep people what they want, even when they're asking for less equity in some cases, it gets back to the big company versus small company argument. Bringing in policy first instead of asking, what is it my people need or want?
And I'd throw in, Chris, that's probably the reason that I became an entrepreneur was, my husband had a job where he wanted to buy stock in the small company and simply be an employee who also could own some stock. He was fully willing to pay for it. The company was totally against that. And we have always disagreed with that opinion, because you want people who are invested in your mission. And when they're saying, I'm willing to put my dollars down on the table to help support the mission of the company, yeah, hell yeah, that's the kind of people you want. That's the commitment that's really going to be take. So having some flexibility and thinking through alternate way, if you don't want to sell them stock, maybe there's something else, but think hard, because you want them aligned with you as you grow the company. Scott, could you?
I would agree. Great comments. And I would say, every company is different, right? Some companies who do have money, maybe there's been a high net worth individual who's put some money in, right? And, it's not that every startup does not have money. The question is, how much money would you and should you put towards salaries if you have money, right? So it is something to think about. You'll, in your journey of identifying great people that are just perfect for your company, as if something like that exists, there'll be times where there'll just be a mismatch, right? It'll be someone who needs a lot of money. They're at that stage in their life. So I have found much better results by starting, with people fresh out of college where they're hungry, they are on fire, they can put the time in, but they don't necessarily bring the experience. Or later on in people's career, once they're getting closer to retirement or can afford to take a risk, or just, after, being in a big company for a long time, wanting to do something entrepreneurial, right? And so, I tend to look at both ends. And again, if you have some money to spend, occasionally putting some of that into some key salary is the best investment you can make. Remember, people are the most important thing. It's hard finding people who don't need the cash and only can really live on the equity, but that's your main job, right? That's the key job of the hiring team, right?
So there's a lot of questions about vesting and equity, and we'll come back to those. I want to also point out that we can talk to you endlessly about lawyers, who to hire and how to structure that. So great questions there, but we'll take all sorts of financial and legal questions and do another thing, because I'm going to go back to the soft stuff. The squishy stuff is what's the most hard here. So one of the things that's happening to you as a technical founder is that all of a sudden you're going to get to be a leader or a manager. And I'm going to just put a guess out there that you might not have had training in how to be a manager. So Chris would be a great person to start with on, what's it like to try to learn to manage people, and how does this change the job for yourself as you grow the company?
That is a challenge because the best technical people are typically not the best managers. And the best technical people don't always have the highest level of emotional intelligence. And it is a challenge. I can't say that it's something every person can learn. I think these are learnable skills. But there are some people who may not be good managers. And that'll be a challenge for a startup, is to put the right people in the right positions. Yeah, so project management specifically can be learned and trained. And there are good ways to do that. And there are courses and there are people who can teach you that. And some people say, well, I can't create a project and do project management or people management for research and development. I think that's false. I think you can do schedules and budgets for research and development. You just have to be more thoughtful and creative about what your deadlines and milestones look like and what your success metrics are. I'm not sure I'm answering the question. I think it's a tough question.
No, I think that's so. Yeah, it's about managing and delegating. Susan and Scott, you guys have had to delegate if you were in large companies. How'd you learn this?
Painfully so. Right? There's many levels of delegation, and different people require different levels of delegation. And so understanding first that everybody is different and you can't just use one model to delegate is really important. Some people you have to check on hourly, other people every couple of years, right? So it's just a matter of I think common sense, right? But I'll go back to something I think Susan said earlier, right? Because it is so important, especially as a founder of a company, somebody who owns the company, created the company, that the culture be the culture that you really want to manifest. And as Susan said, I don't know if it's the first 10, the first 3, the first 7, first 15, but it's the first people that you hire that will define that. So I have two comments, right? One is, the most important thing is, if you make a hiring mistake, identify it early and fix it. We're going to make mistakes, especially as we're scaling companies, right? I've made lots of hiring mistakes, but the comment I was going to make is, when you're hiring the first 10 to 15 to 20 people, you're personally involved, you're interviewing, you're talking to them, you're looking at their backgrounds. As you get beyond that, if you're the founder, you're delegating that to someone, right? So talk about delegating, one of the most important functions of a company. And so having a process where you can check back on that, make sure that, that they do fit in the company. But one of the key takeaways I've learned over the years is, you're gonna make mistakes. Give people a chance and then fix the mistake. Everybody's watching and waiting for you to do it, right? So it's really, really important.
Second that. I'll tell you, my funniest thing I've ever caught myself saying when I know I'm having an issue delegating is, I'm too busy to find the time to make this key hire. Right? And as funny as it is, it's actually, I think you'll find yourself saying that a lot, and it's a good trigger to say, step back. How do you get the things in place that are going to actually allow you to do what you need to do? And second, what you said about firing quickly, if it's not even a bad person thing, it's just a bad match. I, in my current company, made a really big mistake by keeping someone on for the wrong reasons. That person was key. It was early employee. We talk about culture, and this person was actually arguing with me about how our Bluetooth was working on the collar, because they actually said the comment to me that you didn't put in the use case that it had to work while it's on a dog. And I was like, this is a dog collar. So talk about that's not the right culture fit for us, because we're so dog first here. However, I was in the middle of fundraising, and I was very fearful that if I got rid of this person in the middle of that process, that things I had in the pipe were going to fall through, because I am showing that we need to turn the team. It got to the point where I pulled the trigger anyway. I waited longer than I should have. And it actually ended up helping us close the funding because I was able to communicate to the potential investor, who is now an investor, that we were willing to make the hard decisions and do it quick. And that investor saw that as more important than leaving the wrong person on the team.
Sally, you talked about leadership and, transitioning, from being, an innovator, a scientist, to, leading a team. And I think that there's some similar parallels in the restaurant industry as there are in the scientific community. And I've seen this happen multiple times, especially over my last couple of years at CU and my years at University of Denver before that. There are people that open restaurants because they love cooking and they want people to try their food. But there are people that are happier in the kitchen than in the front of the house. There are other people that love being in the front. They love the interaction with the people, and that's where all the satisfaction comes, for them. You look at all of our scientists we have, here, almost everyone on our call, of course, comes out of one of our labs. And if you love the interaction with people, and you love, hearing people's excitement and their frustrations, and you love solving those problems and being that part of the equation, then, the leadership role may be perfect for you. If you like nothing better than getting back to your lab and moving on to the next piece of science, the next innovation, the next iteration, the next, equation to solve, if that's your desire, then managing, the human side is probably not the right fit for you, but you can hire somebody to do that.
Chris, any final thoughts there?
And tech people are trainable, but they have to work hard. Sorry to keep forking up stories here, but one of the stories actually comes from when I was working with you at PPC, Sally, and I was doing business development and got moved into sales and hated it for a while. Technical guy. I don't want to be writing formal quotes. I don't want to be doing that detailed of a customer interaction, especially for customers, a portion of the customers I didn't want to talk to. But switching from the physics to psychology of it turned out to be very both entertaining and captivating. And after a bit of sales training, I actually voluntarily went back and got even more sales training because now I think it's so important. And it's both an example of how hard it is for technical people to transition into other roles, and maybe a success story about they might just like it, actually. And the last thing is that anybody who wants to have a C in their title should work in sales, at least partly, because they have to understand the money and where it comes from, how hard it is. And tech people don't often get that. Founders don't often get how hard sales is.
I love that. Okay, so wow, these just awesome advice. I'm going to grab two questions super quick because we got 3 minutes left. So folks who are asking about firing, let me just say that every single person on this panel will have some staggering war stories if you were to call them offline. You find them at LinkedIn and they can help you with this. The short answer is hire super slow. Take your time, exercise whatever patience you have to get the right people on the bus, particularly if they're a permanent hire. If you do need to fire fast, cut it off and be done with it. It's not going to get any better. Probably every person on this panel has seen a lawsuit or two in their companies. It's always coming out of HR mess and it's always be a cleanup issue. So go on and get it over with. I'm going to turn to equity real quick. Folks who are asking about equity, typically it vests over 48 months. Typically, you have a 1-year cliff at the beginning, so you get nothing for 12 months, and then you get a whole year, and then it's 148 each month. That does change. There is some leeway, but that's the standard. Yes, for you faculty founders, you typically vest too. I vested in my own freaking company when I first got my first venture in. I was so annoyed. I'd founded the dang thing. I did all the work. I'd raised the early capital. I'd done the angel work, and they made me revest in my company. I'll tell you, it kept me committed. And many venture capitalists see this as you are paying for the current work. You are never paying for the past good idea. Go back to Colin's slide, which is so profound, that the idea is worth a little bitty bit and the execution is worth everything. And the real question to a venture capitalist is, what are you doing for me today and tomorrow? Not what have you done, not what great idea. So it's a going forward process. And yes, you should expect that you will be having to vest your own equity in your own company, whether it's through restricted stock or elsewhere. So we're going to wrap at this point so that we stay on time. It's 1 o'clock. I want to give a huge thank you to all of our panel. Thank you so much. This was really awesome. Folks, if anybody had questions that were answered in the chat, you can go down to those 3 dots in the bottom right corner of your chat. Down, you're about to type. If you go to the right side, hit 3 dots. It'll allow you to save the chat as a text document. That's just sort of helpful if you were asking and answering questions in the Q&A. We will have this recorded. And meanwhile, like I say, the people that we have on panels are here because they're willing to talk to people. They have wonderful ideas and they are great connections for you. So reach out to them, reach out to all of us, and keep pushing on your ideas during COVID. It's a wonderful time to keep thinking about this and keep thinking about how to put an idea together into a real commercialization process. So thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Susan.
Thanks, Sally.
Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, much appreciated. Yep. Thanks, everybody. Great questions. Awesome. Okay. Great.
Now, what was our max?
I know we were at 44 at one point, but I got a little involved and forgot to check past that. Yeah, it topped out around 45.
Yeah, I think you're right, Sally. It was 45.
Okay, awesome. Deepika, thank you so much. Awesome questions, much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was very insightful. I think the one thing that could help some researchers would be a resource, right, where they could assess their management and leadership skills.
Yeah.
So something like a Myers-Briggs or a similar resource, right? How do they know whether, they're a good manager or a terrible manager or a good leader versus a bad leader?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Or would they like it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that I thought of, but then I figured out take it offline. But
yeah.
And Deepika, I think that's a great suggestion, and maybe there's some other things we can do to help our scientific founders assess some of those things.
Sally, I think that could be a lunch and learn, Sally and Colin. I honestly think just like a small session on sort of identifying some of these resources and maybe even doing an exercise. Like I remember doing the Myers-Briggs, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I'm always intrigued by, especially, faculty I've had in the past that, I looked up to, being able to command a room and having the charisma as well as the content, to keep a room full of students at any level, undergraduate, graduate, or otherwise, mesmerized is very, very different than keeping a business team, rallied and focused, and what have you. And it's sometimes there's a perception that they're similar, but they're very different, motivating those that are working with you as opposed to motivating students that, are seeking a grade from you. are two very different skill sets.
Well, fear is a motivator too, right? I remember taking Brad Bernthal's class, and we were just so fearful because he would cold call. And that kind of went into your evaluation and your performance in the class. So I think, fear could be a motivator too. Granted, it's not the right motivator. Especially in a company setting.
I totally agree. And yet, I've seen that.
Yeah. There was a random question. Some of them were very technical, but one of the people, it sounded timely, was trying to keep one of his people in the country. They don't have a salary yet. Could they pay them a full-time salary that's just an equity as a way to have him, I think, on the visa? I'll have to check that question, but
Yeah, actually Execure Therapeutics, Sally, had a similar question as well. This is Sid Shukla and Roy
Yeah.
Parker. They were trying to figure this out last year because, Sid is not a citizen yet. And I think there were issues with his visa. So I think a lot of startups have question around
Yeah, and
that.
it may be time. So my good friend Emily Curry of Curry, whatever the name brand company now is, she's an immigration attorney. It may be good to have her on at this point.
Mhm.
The weekly changes from the current administration, I can't figure out who's allowed in and who's not. I mean, see,
Seriously.
the federal government over
Mhm.
and
issues.
it affects a
So-
lot of our clients. I mean, I've had clients who raise funds, have 10 employees, but they themselves can't be in their company full time
Yeah.
because they're tied to their, academic visa.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a good topic because a lot of our graduate student company members are foreign citizens or are here on some kind of a work visa or student visa, and those visas are limited term. So
Yeah.
how do they stay in the country, and what
Well, yeah.
kind of compensation can they get to
Okay.
show a reason for their visa to be extended?
Yeah, part of the problem with equity is it's typically not recognized as income when granted.
Taxed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's when it's
Mhm.
taxed.
Mhm.
So and that only happens when it either fully vests and recognized or is converted if it were an option. So
Mhm.
it's just granted or earned but hasn't had that second trigger. Usually that's not recognized at that point. Now the upside, is you don't get taxed on it yet. But the downside, of course, is it's probably not going to be a benefit as showing for the foreign national.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna jump off. I have another call, but thank you guys so much. This was great. The
Awesome,
panel
yeah.
was great, Sally.
Oh, I'm so glad. Stephen, really thanks for just jumping in. Great comments. I hope a few people heard your story up front because just the shocking